Because of its flying attributes, the basic G-89 model aircraft was recognized not only as a basic frame for the Hunter Killer ASW equipment, but also without the ASW gear as an ideal COD aircraft. Carrier onboard delivery missions had always been very inefficiently carried out by carrier-capable warplanes such as the Grumman Avenger TBM. Carriers at sea need to make use of their capability as a floating airfield to fly in urgent stores, visitors, mail or crew joining the ship, and to fly out visitors, critically injured or sick crew members, and also such items as costly aircraft parts requiring special attention. By enlarging the G-89 fuselage, the aircraft could accommodate 9 passengers or 3,500 pound cargo load. The C-1A Trader, as it became known, brought home to the Navy just what it had been missing out on by not having developed a proper COD aircraft prior to January of 1955, when Grumman began delivering Traders. Later, the Traders were to be replaced by Grumman C-2 Greyhounds, a turboprop COD aircraft related to the E-2C Hawkeye, which re-entered production during the 1980s in order to fill this task.
So what's your fuel throughout? Any questions?
4 C-1A Traders were greatly modified as EC-1As to teach crewmen the art of electronic countermeasures, a major weapon in modern warfare. They had as many as 70 antennas attached to their ECM equipment on board. Grumman had been associated with the concept of airborne early warning from its beginnings during World War II, when it was realized that an airborne surveillance radar would overcome limitations imposed by the curvature of the Earth when using land or sea-based radars. The very first plane to carry an AEW radar was a Grumman Avenger in 1943. But as bigger and more powerful radars evolved, a larger aircraft platform was needed to keep them aloft. Once again, the model G-89 proved its flexibility to become the E-1B Tracer. The Tracer, with its ability to keep track of every aircraft, ship and almost every moving object within a radius of 230 miles, could provide such vital functions as spotting hostile aircraft while they were still far beyond the horizon, to observers at low level, and could also give directions to friendly attack aircraft, or to individual planes caught in bad weather, or any kind of trouble. By today's standards, the limitations put on the Tracer by its service ceiling and the APS-82 radar used in it are great. But in comparison with all previous AEW history, the possibilities were tremendously exciting. The development of the airborne early warning concept provided Grumman with a lot of business throughout the 1960s and beyond.
Bridge gone, submerged.
At a time when technological advances in ASW equipment was being constantly upgraded and submarines kept finding new methods of quieter operation as the need arose, the S-2 tracker flexibility accommodated many and varied avionics in and on its fuselage structure, and so obviating the need to replace the whole aircraft in order to keep up to date with the new skills and equipment for many years. Realizing that individual aircraft may be configured for special roles and therefore differ slightly, we'll now take a closer look at the S-2 tracker during its later years of service. 14 S-2E trackers were delivered into Australian waters alongside 10 A4 Skyhawks on the carrier Melbourne. 9 trackers destroyed in a hangar fire at Nowra Naval Base on the 4th of December 1976 were replaced by S-2G models, purchased second-hand from US Navy storage. And a further 7 were also added to Royal Australian Navy inventory, where they remained in service until mid-1984. Here's what Commander Ken Alderman, in charge of the Fleet Air arm of the Royal Australian Navy, has to say about this aircraft.
This Grumman tracker behind us is operated by the Fleet Air Arm Historic Flight, based at Nowra. It's one of a collection of naval and ex-naval aircraft types that we're maintaining in an airworthy condition for just this very purpose, bringing along to displays for the people of Australia to enjoy a little bit of aviation heritage.
Just what task did this aircraft carry out during its active Navy service?
It's a medium-range maritime patrol type aircraft, similar capabilities to the P-3 Orion. It was carrier-based. We had two squadrons of the tracker, 851 Squadron and 816 Squadron. Both those squadrons obviously now been phased out with the demise of the carrier, but the aircraft was carrier-based, operated by both those squadrons and operated from HMAS Albatross at Nowra.
How many trackers would you expect to find aboard HMAS Melbourne at any time, Ken?
A mix of numbers, up to 8 at any one stage, and it depended on the configuration of Skyhawks and other helicopters.
Were trackers used extensively in the Australian Navy?
Oh yes, yeah, they were used around the clock, in fact, and when they weren't based on the carrier, they were employed in Bass Strait patrols and around the northwest of Australia continuously.
Ken and number 844 now fly for the Naval Aviation Museum of the Fleet Air Arm based at Nowra in New South Wales. The aircraft carries a 4-man crew, pilot and co-pilot in the cockpit, sonar buoy operator, and manned ECM radar operator immediately behind in the operator's compartment. The pilot and co-pilot, seated side by side, each have a complete set of primary and secondary flight controls, and navigational indicators are centrally located, with fuel, communications and lighting controls positioned overhead. Either one or both the pilots can carry out tactical, navigational or flight control functions. The Navigational Tactical Display Unit is centrally located above the armament section and control panels. All crew members enter their stations via the main cabin door, located behind the sonar buoy operator station. And in the case of a bailout, this opening is also used after the door has been jettisoned. But each crew member has his own overhead escape hatch for his personal means of exit if the aircraft is ditched. Stations 3 and 4 contain most of the electronic equipment installed for detection, localization and classification of submarines. Blackout curtains are provided to each operator's window as they are seated abreast and facing forward in their separate compartments. Operator 3 controls and monitors the search radar, ECM director finder and the sniffer during the search, and the magnetic anomaly detector during localization. In addition, he may introduce target contacts made by any of these into the tactical display in the cockpit. The Electronic Countermeasures, or ECM wideband intercept system, provides instantaneous indications of the bearing of radar signals from external sources, including the hunted submarines. 6 antennas in each wingtip can pick up a signal, amplify it, and then convert it into useful tactical data. A 42-inch by 20-inch 360-degree search radar antenna is positioned in a ventral retractable dustbin radome, which is also controlled by Operator 3. This radar displays weather data, islands and shorelines on a planned position indicator, that is PPI, at the same time as locating aircraft and surface vessels which show up as blips on the radar scope. To assist with the hunter aspect of a mission, a condensation nuclei detector, or sniffer, is included in the system. An intake probe, located forward on the underside of the fuselage, continuously samples air from outside. It detects and measures changes in concentration of condensation nuclei in the air, present due to exhaust fumes from submarines or other craft. And after amplifying the information which it extracts from the air samples, it's recorded on a special R232 recorder at Operator 3's station. Once a contact has been made and recorded on the computer display, the pilot can return to the immediate area, enabling Operator 3 to fix the target location for subsequent short-range tactics, and eventually to classify the target using the MAD system. This equipment detects and records changes in the Earth's magnetic field by a ferrous object such as a sunken iron ship or a submarine, but compensates for the permanent magnetic field which may be caused by the aircraft itself. Signals from a detecting head in the retractable boom are recorded on the RO32 recorder. This two-channel recorder indicates by using red for sniffer information and black for mad information on a continuous chart printout. Operator 3 determines the presence of a submarine when he observes characteristic deflections corresponding on both sections of the paper chart. Operator 4 on the tracker's Hunter-Killer mission controls the Julie and Jezebel equipment for search and localization. An intercommunication or ICS system enables operators 3 and 4 to talk to one another without interfering with pilot conversation, but at the same time record Julie signals and, when necessary, communicate with the entire crew. Operator 4 monitors underwater sound signals collected from any of the 16 sonar buoys stored in each engine nacelle, aft of the engine, and dispensed by the pilot. The sonar buoys are floating buoys equipped with a water-soluble dye marker and incandescent light, a hydrophone, an antenna, and an FM transmitter relaying sound signals to the whip antenna mounted under each nacelle. Several types of sonar buoys and marine markers may be loaded and dropped in various combinations in a predetermined pattern grid of listening, or passive sonar buoy types which sit in the water sending back signals to the aircraft equipment via the whip antenna. When a positive signal has been distinguished by comparing the signals received from a pair of sonar buoys, the locality can be limited to a specific area by the Jezebel AN AQA4 indicator, which in turn is further localized by using the Julie technique, which is based on explosive echo ranging. An explosive charge, called a sus from signal underwater sound, is dropped near one of the passive sonar buoys in the suspected target area. If the resulting wave strikes an underwater target, some energy is reflected to the hydrophone suspended beneath the sonar buoy. Number 4 operator and the pilot can both drop visual marine markers which give the pilot a visual reference point at sea by emitting white smoke and flame for about 15 minutes. They are visible during both day and nighttime operations and are dispensed from their storage bay located on the outboard side of each engine nacelle. By analyzing the signals sent from the various active and passive detection equipment dropped, Operator 4 can detect both an explosive wave and the echoes, eventually pinpointing the target's position, thus enabling effective use of the weapons carried on board. The Hunter mission completed, the tracker uses its weapon load to carry out the kill. 6 wing stations and a torpedo bay in the fuselage make the S-2E or G a versatile anti-submarine aircraft. The torpedo bay accommodates bombs or torpedoes, and the wing stations mount various combinations of depth bombs, torpedoes and rockets. The Mark 43, 44 and 46 torpedoes used are all the homing type, which descend to the depth of the target and seek it out. Mark 54 depth bombs may be carried on the wing stations, but the Mark 101 and Mark 57 depth bombs, which may be carried within the weapons bay, have a nuclear charge. Rockets are effective when attacking surface targets. To aim the aircraft toward a target when firing rockets, the pilot uses a ring sight stenciled on the inside of the windshield and a bead sight mounted in front of it. Actual release of the weapons is carried out by depressing buttons on the pilot's or co-pilot's control wheel. The tracker can carry up to 4,810 pounds of bombs, but with a lighter payload and greater fuel reserves, it can patrol for a maximum of 9 hours before refueling, although a 6-hour mission was more usual. Some other points of interest about the tracker, which many people may not know, include the following. Night missions are aided by a 70 million candle power carbon arc search lamp, controlled by the co-pilot and mounted on the leading edge of the right wing. It's capable of effectively illuminating a submarine snorkel 1 mile away whilst flying at 300 feet. The arrestor hook, which is made of a non-magnetic material which will not interfere with the operation of the sensitive electronic equipment on board, has a fail-safe design, ensuring that the hook will fail under stress before the aircraft structure does. To permit efficient storage in the limited space available on aircraft carriers, the tracker's wings are hydraulically folded, hinged at a point just outboard of the engine nacelles, up and over on slightly diagonal hinges. So they lie beside each other above the centre section, thus reducing the wingspan from more than 70 feet to just over 27 feet. With a length of 43.5 feet and a height of less than 17 feet, this places a great deal of ASW Hunter killer power into a very tidy package.
Western flying guard, this is Tower. Flying completed. Return to ship. Land.
Variants of the S2 tracker served the US Navy in first-line ASW service for nearly 23 years, during which time updated fits of avionics and instruments had greatly improved its ASW capabilities since its first service in 1954. Some trackers were later converted for use as general utility transports or for target towing.
Yes, please, sir.
Meanwhile, trackers were acquired by other nations as land-based ASW aircraft. And in 1986, S2 AEF and G versions remained operational for ASW, maritime reconnaissance and coastal patrol duties. These were Argentina, Brazil, South Korea, Peru, Taiwan, Thailand, Turkey, Uruguay and Venezuela.
Thank you.
When production at Grumman stopped in December 1967, the total number of trackers which had been produced there was 1,171. with a further 100 built under license by de Havilland of Canada as CS2F1 and CS2F2.